the most important thing in a fly area. And that, to me, is that there's room for the illusion of life within the fly. And the best way to defeat that is to tie a fly. Things about fish that I know, and one of them is that fish will either react to something or they'll respond to it. And the flies that are sold in fly stores, to me, are all reaction strike type flies. You have to move them through the water fast. The fish sees it swim by and he grabs it. Same as if you stepped on a dog's tail and will bite you. And that's what you're doing. And the same thing with poppers. You know, the fish react to poppers. Now you can tie a popper in such a way that it actually will be taken by a fish while it sits there quietly in the water. But it won't look like the poppers that you buy in the store. It won't be opaque. It'll be thin and very sparse, and it will move in the water just within itself. I know that what I'm saying is true. I'm very dogmatic, you know. And it's the same with like that thing that I was quoted on in the paper about a squid fly. I catch a lot of fish on squid flies, but I never used to catch fish on squid flies until I stopped tying flies that looked like what I thought a squid looked like. And in other words, I would make these little sculptures or pictures of squid, and I wouldn't catch any fish with them. And then one day, I just, basically off of a fly I call it Razzle Dazzle, I made a fly that I threw it in the water while there was some squid there, and it looked just like a squid. And from that idea of what does the thing look like in the water, I started to create flies that catch fish when they're on squid. I can show you some of these in a row. But the idea I'm trying to get across is that water itself, the water itself, is a part of the fly. It's one of the ingredients of the fly. You don't tie it on, but if you don't leave room for it, the fly won't have any movement within it. Does anybody understand what I'm talking about? Yes. Because I'm not sure. It's hard to explain things that don't exist, you know, at least for me. So, when I tie flies, I'll show you a little mullet fly here. This is a mullet fly. And there's hardly, I'll pass it around. There's hardly anything to it. Bucktail around. In other words, one hair thick instead of a bunch of bucktail. I don't tie each one on individually, but I do it 4 times. I tie the bottom, I'll tie the side, and I'll tie the top. I don't have any on the top on this fly. What happens when that fly goes in the water is that bucktail expands in the water and it moves. And because it's so thin, it moves quite freely. I mean, I could do it with marabou, but the marabou would lay down flat when I moved it in the water. The bucktail's got just enough resistance so it keeps its shape. The fact is, there is marabou in this spot. So when I throw this fly in the water, I look at it and I see this little round finger mullet. If I didn't do that, if I didn't think about that when I tied the fly, it would never do that, and if it did do it, I wouldn't know it, and I wouldn't be able to repeat it because it wouldn't be in my mind. It would be an accident. You understand what I'm saying there? So what I'm trying to say is, you should always have an idea of what you want to do with your materials, and then make your materials do what that idea calls for. At this point, I'd like to mention Paul Jorgensen's book on training fly tying. I think that's the best book on tying flies that was ever put out, except for a couple of other ones. But he talks about how to handle materials in a wonderful, wonderful way. He teaches you the fundamentals. It's almost like learning how to build a house from blueprints. He teaches you the right positioning of your materials, how to cut your materials, how to move your material. Other people do it, and other people do it well, but I think that's an excellent book to get to learn how to handle feathers and hairs, and even like doubling a hackle, all kinds of things. I'm going to talk a little bit about those things too. The other thing I wanted to talk about is I don't tie with a lot of I don't read magazines, so I don't know a lot about the things you probably know an awful lot about. I don't know about lead eyes. I don't know about, there's this material out now that they make, somebody you were talking about, what is it called? Yeah, you did.
Gotzai was Corsair.
Corsair. I don't know what Corsair is.
Just something on your head.
Oh, okay. Well, whatever it is, I don't want to know what it is. So, all I'm going to be talking about is old-fashioned ways of tying flies. I don't use those things. So there's been a lot of changes in technique and in materials, but still, if that fly doesn't have the illusion of life in it, it's not going to catch anything. It will catch something if you pull it through the water 100 miles an hour. You will. You can catch every trout in a trout pond if you cast out your fly. You cannot open in bed. You can't get the fly in without having 2 or 3 trout chase it. That's the old. Kids learn that, you know. You can have the most fancy fly in the world. You'll catch trout on every cast, and if you have a piece of shit, you'll catch a trout on every cast. So basically what I'm saying is to try to tie flies that have the illusion of life in them is what you should be doing. In saltwater fly fishing, especially for stripers, the length of the fly is very, very important. Now, my theories on length of fly are as follows. Always make the fly smaller than the bait, and you never have a refusal. Now, a refusal is if you see a bass come up to your fly and then turn around and go down. That's what I mean by a refusal. If you see that, then something's wrong with your fly. Not everything, because the fish came up, he was interested, he wanted to look at it. So the first thing I do when that happens is I try to make less of the fly for him to refuse. You know what I mean? To me, there's something about the fly that the fish recognizes and it causes him to reject the fly. So I'll try to eliminate that thing that he's seeing that he doesn't like. So basically, I'll start off by trying to make the fly a little bit smaller. Then I'll make it a little bit sparser. Then I'll take out a pair of scissors or I'll bite the hair off the fly. I'll end up with a bare hook. And sometimes I'll catch a fish with just a body. And it isn't, I'm basing all that on, not on imitation, but on trying to make sure that the fly doesn't see something, the fish doesn't see something in the fly that he doesn't like. Even if the fly is the right pattern, if the fly is too big, you won't catch any fish. You may catch some fish if you rush the fly through the water, but the pattern won't catch fish for you. You know, it's how the fly has to be tied. And then there's a, another thing about flies is color. And color is important to me. It doesn't mean that it's important to the fish, but it's important to me. And I like color a lot. And I think that you can catch just as many fish on white flies and on yellow flies as you can on fancy flies. But I like to play with color. And I'll tell you what I mean. If I want to make something green or olive color, I can take an olive feather and tie that on it. And it will be there, and it'll be olive, and it will work. Or I can take olive bucktail. Or I can take yellow and blue and put a little bit of red in it, and I'll have olive. I prefer to do that because of a lot of reasons. And color's a funny thing. It's like, it's mechanical. It's mechanical in a, you know, you've all seen a color wheel. There's things about color that people don't know. And that, like, one of the things about color that people don't know is that it's impossible to see complementary colors at the same time with your eye. Anybody's eye, even a fish's eye or a bird's eye. Because complementary colors are on opposite ends of the rods, or whatever they are, whether rods or cones. There's 2 things in your eyes. One's called a rod, which is for lightness and darkness, and the other thing's called a cone, which is for color. So on one end of this cone, I don't know what a cone looks like. It is a little receptor for the color red. Okay? And on the other end, there's a receptor for the color green. And when you see red, all those little cones switch over and look at that red, and then they all see the red. Now, if you put green, they all have to turn around because it's on the opposite end of the same cone. So it's a mechanical thing. So I'm trying to get the point. So when I tie flies, I use a lot of complementary colors because I know that that color interaction in that fish's eyeball is going to start to shimmer. It's like when you look at good advertising, there must be some good advertising. Or like Merry Christmas signs, you know, they're green and red. Like the edges of the letters will vibrate on you, but it's only because of the cones popping back and forth in your head. So I know that about color. So I use that in my fly tying. I might just tie a fly, you know, look for just the right complements, you know, add them to the fly, just so I have this vibrancy within the fly itself. I like doing that. And that's why I do it. It probably doesn't really mean anything, but it makes me happy. And sometimes I catch fish, and I think it's because of that, and that makes me even happier. And when somebody's saying, what color is that fly? I say, well, it's olive, you know, and they're using olive, and I'm catching the fish, and they're not, and I like that even better. And I can tell them what I've just told you, and none of them will do it. So I don't think you people will do this. But if you do it, you'll have some fun. Now, if you add that vibrancy of color to a fly, even just a dash of it, I like doing that with squid fly. I'm going to pass this little tiny squid fly around. This is heavily dressed, but it catches fish like crazy in the surf. And you'll see that idea in that fly. That's why I'm passing it around. So, translucency. Translucency is a quality that comes from having the fly tied in such a way that light will pass through it. And that works with this color theory that I'm talking about to this degree, that if you have a red, say a red bucktail hair, and a yellow one, and a blue one, there's only three colors, red, yellow, and blue. All the other colors come from mixes of those. And they're in that fly, and the fly's moving through the water, and the light's coming down on it. As that fly moves, the light's going to hit it at different angles, and it will set up these make-believe colors that don't actually exist, and that they're not in the fly, but they are accidents. They're produced by the light interacting with the color. You can't get that if you make a very stiff, heavily tied fly, because there's no room for the light to pass through. So there's no sparkle within the fly. So, you know, absolutely clear Zara spook catches fish like unbelievably well, but people won't buy them. And so there's, so they don't sell that many. And I'm going to show you the best. This is a little aside. I have to show you this though, if I can find it. I learned a lot from this. This thing here is a rubber worm. See that? I'm going to pass this around too. A rubber worm. If I could tie a fly that does what this thing did, I would probably catch more striped bass than any human being ever did on a fly rod. Right, Gino? It's unbelievable. That particular rubber worm with a 16th ounce or a 32nd ounce jig head catches bass unbelievable. It catches bass better than a fly rod. And the reason why is because you can control where it is. You don't move it. You can see through it. It's got these little reflective bits of mylar in it. It's got a little bit of action within it. It's the right size. It's the right length. It's watery. And you can put it where you want it. So look at that and think about flies when you're looking at that, because it comes in different colors.
Yeah, I seen it plenty of times last spring, unfortunately.
Like last spring, I went out and just did this with the spinning rod. Here's another one. This is the same thing, only different. And one night I was Paul Doobie. Where's Paul? He was at the mill gut, and I showed up with a spinning rod. He didn't know who I was because I had a spinning rod. said, how you doing? Oh, what are you doing? It's been a while. And I said, oh, just going to catch a few bass. Cast it in, and they've been there for a couple of hours. Bang, got a bass. Next cast, they get a bass. Next cast, they get a bass. Next cast, they get a bass. And it was just like that. So, there's things about that particular lure. We can think about that lure when we're tying flies. That's why I'm passing it. You'll have the essence of what I'm trying to talk about. Now, I like to use a lot of what I call watery colors, and that comes from the olden days. They used to call flies like pale watery dun instead of hexagonal rubata, you know. And I like those old names because they're kind of romantic to me. And like a dun hackle, you know, a gray or a bronze dun like this is. I like these hackles because of what they don't say. They'll add a certain amount of translucency to a fly because they don't have any strong color. And the water kind of, they're closer to the color of water than they are to, let's say, a brown or a yellow or something. So they have a tendency to diminish the outline of the fly. Even though the fly is there, it's diminished somewhat. It isn't quite as strong. And so I use a lot of like dun feathers and like a gray bucktail, or just a hair of these colors that I'm talking about. Like this is fluorescent yellow. I might only put 3 or 4 pieces of this in a fly, but that does it. It doesn't overstate it. You know, it doesn't make this giant statement to the fish that if you don't like the fluorescent yellow, don't look at this fly. It's just there, just about there. And if he does like it, he'll have a tendency to draw him into the fly, or at least not to confuse the fly. The reason I'm talking about is because silver, the silver sides on bait fish don't show silver in the water. What they do is they reflect the light around them. And I'll tell you about an experiment I did 3 years. Not an experiment. I'm not a scientist. But I went and caught some fish, and I put them in a tank. And they're these little, do you know the name of those things yet? Those little sunfish. They're like, and I had them in a tank and had light behind me, and I'd look at them and they were all purple and silver, and you could see their gut really nice. They had all those little iridescent colors. And then one day, I went behind the tank and looked, and they weren't there. I could see right through them. I could see right through sunfish. And I went back out in front again, and they were there. And I went over to the side, and they were copper colored. I started looking at them from different angles with the same light source. And that's when I realized that fish, depending on how the light hits them, either disappear, change color, become more prominent when they're being reflected on. And a whole bunch of things in between. You know, there was a yellowish green look at one little corner of the tank. And so I realized that if I put a fly in the water that looked like one thing that I wanted it to look like, that I was really, really limiting the options of what that fly could do for me. So I started to expand with color. But it was amazing to see a sunfish, which you think of as like really solid, just turn into this light gray shape, watery shape, that you could tell what it was, but it didn't say sunfish the way that we think sunfish. And so I started using, instead of like big strong white flies and big heavy flies, I started to with a lot more vagueness. And this is another squid fly. I'm going to pass this one around. This is a little bit different than that last one. And eventually, let's talk about another little fly. There's a man here who loves this fly. This is, actually this fly is tied in. These flies have been mailed all over the country for the last 2 or 3 months, and so they've all been ironed in envelopes. This fly is supposed to be flat like that, but it's been bent. And the reason that it's flat is because when it's flat, it moves in the water like that. Very simple idea. This little head blows up And you put this thing in the water, and you'd swear it was a little eel. And you just about touch it, and it swims. Just like, now if the feathers were upright, they wouldn't swim at all. They would just go up and down. I've got one in here somewhere that, I've been using this fly for years. And I don't know how many bass I've caught on it. I mean, these are all rusty, old, beat-up ones. When I tie this fly, this is a little bit about the mechanics of tie fly tying. I would say tie fly. I would have. When you're tying a fly, if you just think that you have to stick the stuff on the hook so it doesn't look too bad and then go fishing, you're not catching a lot of fish that you could catch. You should try to become aware of what you're doing when you're tying. So let's just say that this is the back of a hook right here. Now this fly is very simple. It's 4 feathers. You look, there's one feather sticking out right now. I'm going to tell you why it is. Right in here, put in maybe 10 or 15 little black deer here, or some type of stiff hair. What that does is that gives you a little platform that these feathers will rest on, instead of them going underneath the hook when you cast them. It's a very simple idea, but it's a mechanical idea that helps, because you're going to be having a very long tail. Then I'll tie in a saddle hackle, but I'll tie it with a curve facing up. That's what this one oddball feather is. That little feather. Now that curve going up makes a little platform for the 3, or the, yeah, there's 3. So then I tie in 3 more with the curves facing down. Now the little platform underneath gives us support for this one feather that sticks up. Well, what happens is when it goes on there is they balance each other and they swim just right. You know, there's a tension within the curves of these feathers that you can use to make your fly do things that you wouldn't have at all unless you thought about it and built the fly with those thoughts in mind. So then I have this puffy, bivisible type lump here. But when that gets wet, it just kind of evens out and it moves as it moves through the water. This fly, you throw it in a current and just let it sit there and it will swim. It will swim without you wiggling it. It will just sit there and it will, every little nuance of current that touches it makes the fly move. You like this fly and you add glue to it, you know, and you've been using that for years. I remember when I saw you.
Good fly.
It's an excellent fly.
And tackle?
The head's anything that happens to be on my tying bench. That's long enough to tie. The fly. That's called the eel punch. I don't know why it's called the eel punch. I know why. Because it's something I use when I don't know what to use. I'll pass that on. This one is a pretty one. That's actually tied with flat hackles. All my flies are tied with hackles and flat, except for maybe 1 or 2. And I'm going to keep on passing around squid flies because I want to overstay them.
It was laid flat.
There's another squid fly. This squid fly has a 7/0 hook, I think, offset eagle claw. And it's offset 7/0 eagle claw hook in a squid fly that I was using for big fish. I lost the big fish that I caught. Now,
They know why they did it. Because I know why they did it. They saw my fly and spit yours out.
that's probably what but they were able to spit it out.
Yeah,
So that's the point.
that's the whole thing, right?
Yeah. And I had them on a 12-weight lemongrass. You know, the rod, they were big fish. They were right where they were supposed to be. They did what they were supposed to do. And I didn't bother doing what I knew I was supposed to do. So anyway, getting back to the flat. This is another fly, fish fly, big fish fly. This is called a razzle dazzle. And I love this fly. I'll tell you a little bit about this fly. When you tie big flies to try to imitate big bait, well, either you have to tie this giant fly that you can't cast, or you have to come up with these crazy theories about why you can't catch the fish. Well, this kind of a tie, this flat wing tie, you can tie flies. This fly, you can cast this on an 8-weight or a 9-weight. And taking into consideration like how fish disappear, what I was talking about earlier about how the silver sides reflect their surroundings and what they're in. And if you look at bait fish, even those Jacques Cousteau movies, and that, you see them as little black lines. And like, especially in the fall when the schools of herring are moving through, you know, those bluebacks, you look in a wave and you see a whole school of herring, and it looks just like a little, they're like little lines. You catch one of those herring, and they're 12 inches long, they're about 2.5 inches, 3 inches deep. But you look in that wave, and all you see is this little tiny greenish line. You don't ever see, you know, a picture of a herring. So that kind of an idea. Talk a little bit more about this fly. If you pick through your saddle hackers, we're going to tie a big fly now, theoretical big fly. You pick through your saddle hackers. You started off with that little base to support the hackers that you're going to put on. Your first hacker that you put on is going to be upright. Then you want to put a little bit of flash, not a lot of flash, just a little bit of flash. So you take 2 strands of one of the primary colors of mylar, or silver. Okay, so you take like 2 strands of red, which, why would red be in a herring fly? Just put it in anyway. Then put on, then take a nice long, or for some mechanical reason, figure out what feather you want to use. But have a mechanical reason in your mind. Don't just grab a feather and stick it on. The stem is thick enough to do what you want it to do, or thin enough to do what you want it to do. Then tie it on over the, let's say some strength in the white in the back part of the fly. So maybe you put another white feather on. Maybe you'll put a white feather on that's got a yellowish cast to it, just to bring that little bit of, just that little extra, I don't know, makes you feel good sometimes to fool around with color. And then put on 2 more strands. This time use blue. Then take a nice, you don't know what to do, okay? You're at a point and say, I don't know what to do. So take a gray feather, you know, one that doesn't have any color to it, and add that on.